Welcome to Dory Cote on Shamanism, a weekly podcast that explores one theme in shamanism throughout each month. Get comfortable, have a seat, and let's get started.
Welcome, everybody, to this week's podcast. I'm very pleased to be here with you again and hoping that you receive some benefit from these words I have to share this time. I really want to talk about the weather and how the weather is a reflection of what is happening inside the human hearts and minds of the masses at this time. If we truly believe and trust and know that there is no separation amongst all beings, that I am you, you are me, we are all one with God, Allah, Jesus, Buddha, the universe, the cosmos, whatever you want to name as that power that is greater than ourselves. We are all a part of that composite of God. Then how can we possibly imagine that we are not also being energetically reflected in what is happening in weather throughout our world? When you pause to think about it for even a moment, you might come to realize that we are never separate from the weather. The weather is the envelope in which we live. The weather is touching your skin 24/7. So, people talk about in the wintertime, their skin is so dry. That's a reflection of the fact that the air is dry in certain areas of the northern hemisphere in the wintertime. Or there is so much moisture in the air. My skin is very damp. I'm sweating. That's because there is an excess of moisture in the envelope of the air that surrounds you. So there's a constant interchange going on between you, your thoughts, your feelings, your expressions, your way of being, and the weather. So we are the weather, and the weather is us, in fact, as I see it. And we are living in an extraordinary time right now in this October 2017, when there are amazing weather events here in the Northern Hemisphere. And I'm not aware of all of them, I am sure, but I am aware of what is happening in the United States, which is 3 major hurricanes that have impacted our shores so far to this date, and the hurricane season is not over with. An earthquake in Mexico, destructive fires in huge areas of the Northwest, and many, many other smaller events that receive the attention of people in regions or areas or towns that are not necessarily nationally known. And so we have to pause and ask ourselves, what is it that is creating all of these storms? What is it that is creating this time that we're living in where there is a great deal of swirling, twirling energy? The meteorologists, the news, the media, and even we as individuals call these storms destructive, painful, furious, dangerous, rageful. We put all kinds of words onto the storm that really are far more appropriate about who we are, what is happening with us as people. There is a great deal of fury. There is a great deal of ragefulness. There is a great deal of anger and fury, power, destruction in the hearts, in the minds, and in the events that are being generated by humans all over the globe. And so, of course, the weather is going to reflect that back to us. How could it not? It is one with us. We are not separated. There's a lot being said, of course, about, global climate change. And it's not an accident, of course, that climate change is happening because, again, there are so many humans on the planet at this time. And the ways in which the weather and the climate, that envelope that surrounds us here on Earth, is in a constant change because of the changes that we are going through. And there is no way that we can justify the possibility that we are not in any way responsible for what is happening in the area of climate change, because we are one with the whole aspect of what is happening on Earth. Every moment a raindrop falls out of the sky or the sun shines, we are related to that. Yes, Jill, did you have a question?
Yeah, so this almost feels overwhelming because the fury and the pain of the people after these storms come. Where do you start in practice to take responsibility and try and shift for a calmer, more peaceful? How does one pray it? How does one approach it with ceremony to ask that no more destruction be done other than what is necessary for waking up consciousness? What can we do about this?
Yes. Yeah, that's a really good question. In my teachings with my students, when we talk about weather and we do intentional workshops on the topic of the weather, the spirit of weather, what we come to know and see through many shamanic journeys and exploration and discussion is that it isn't really ethical to try to impact a large force such as a hurricane or a tornado or a raging fire or an earthquake. See, I just used the word raging myself to talk about the fire. The fire is not rageful. The fire is hot and it burns and it's scientifically, material and oxygen and, it just, fire does what it does. A hurricane does what it does. A tornado does what it does. It doesn't have an intention. But it is a creation of what is being reflected back to us as humans. So to go back to...
And it's a reflection of the collective, right?
A reflection of the collective, absolutely.
So
not
as
an individual thing.
Yes, and so as an individual, how can one shift the collective? Or
one shifts the collective, yes, is by changing the way you live, by changing your everyday, your every moment kind of experience, to not engage in anger, to not engage in retribution, to not engage in name calling, to not engage in projecting your own fear and pain and anxiety out into the world, onto other humans or onto other living beings. It's about being responsible as a spiritual person and seeking calm, peace, and a place in your own heart where you can see that we are all human. We are all loving beings. We all have a spirit within. And so if we can stop fighting, if we can stop arguing, if we can stop sending hateful words out into the world, if we can stop speaking harmful language, if we can stop raging at one another, then the weather is going to reflect that back to us. It's an individual walk, and yet the more of us who are doing that will have an impact on the collective. Is the point where there is a tipping, we reach the tipping point. If there are more of us who are living conscious lives of being intentionally peaceful, harmonious, not hateful, not sending negative jabs at individuals who are in political leadership or individuals who are, in the mainstream news, or even sending hateful words to what we call the patriarchy or the bureaucracy or any of that. It doesn't mean that we don't take a stand in those areas, but we don't bully. We don't use negative words. We don't name call. We don't do all those kinds of things that feed the anger, feed the rage, feed the fury, feed the destructiveness. And when we do that, when we stand in responsibility for our own actions and our own words, then we will eventually have an impact on the collective if there are enough of us, spiritual beings, who are taking responsibility for ourselves and how we are responding to human activity and the activity of the weather beings. Stop calling the storm bad words. The storm doesn't start out somewhere out in the Pacific thinking, oh yeah, I'm going to travel over here and I'm just going to tear the heck out of this island. It doesn't have that consciousness. It is what it is. It's doing what it does. And we might be standing in the way. It just is.
So as you're talking, I'm seeing the image of, we're talking about hurricanes. And when you were saying take a stand for peacefulness, the eye of a hurricane is deeply peaceful.
Mm-hmm.
And
exactly.
And it is something that can, we use the eye. It's as if it is something that can see us, that we can see. But if the eye of the hurricane has ever passed over you, it's an unearthly, beautiful peace.
Beautiful peace, quiet, non-destructive energy. The eye of the storm is precisely, it's the place of order versus chaos.
And we have to remember, if this is the metaphor for the collective, that too exists
in the storm.
So, yes.
It absolutely does.
You were calling for us to stand in that and increase its strength, the peacefulness of it.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes. So, if there's a message I want to try to get across to people here, it's this: stop demonizing the weather, because the weather does not have an intention to be destructive. It does not have a personality. It does not want to eat up the buildings. It does not want to cause human death. It exists because we, as humans, have created this place of amazing disharmony. Yes, one could say, of course, storms have been happening since the planet was formed. We know this, of course. And yet there are many phases through which the planet Earth has gone. And we are at a place now where the human population on this planet is beyond anything that has ever been in the history of this planet. And as a result, we are having a much greater impact on how the weather is created, because we are polluting the air, we are polluting the water, we are transforming the way the natural world was originally intended to function. We're trying to, not necessarily intentionally, but unintentionally or through greed or other human feelings or human desires, are creating a tremendous disharmony on the planet. We cannot expect to create that and not have it come back at us. And so it's up to each person to take responsibility for, don't dump that cup of Starbucks coffee on the lawn. Don't throw your gum wrapper on the street. Don't, go to the ocean on your boat and dump the lunch you didn't eat into the water. Don't do those things. The water wasn't intended to take your unused lunch or your garbage. That's not helpful. That is creating disharmony, and it's coming back at us. Every person has to have responsibility for their actions, their thoughts, their words, and the ways in which they relate with everything that is around them. When we are more of us on that path, then we can create the possibility of there being much greater peace and harmony on the planet.
Thank you.
You're so welcome.
Is there anything else you want to say on this subject? It feels complete.
Yes, it does to me too. I could speak probably for days about, the weather and how to work with the spirits of the weather, but that's not really the intention of this particular podcast. I will speak again another time about how we as individuals might, adopt a particular aspect of weather and communicate with that aspect of weather and dance with that weather, and also what does it mean to be in the dance of order and chaos, like the eye of the storm and the more chaotic whirling energy of the exterior of the storm. But today I feel complete.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Dory Cote on Shamanism. We'd love to hear your thoughts, stories, reactions, and questions. Come on over to dorycote.com and join the conversation. And tune in next week for more on this subject, or next month for a new subject. You can subscribe to this podcast in iTunes or sign up on dorycote.com to receive notices when the podcasts are posted. That's Dory, D-O-R-Y, and Cote, C-O-T-E.com. Drumming and rattling by Dory Cote and Terry Morgan. Technical assistance and audio production by JillHackett.com. And this is Susan Savelle, wishing you many blessings in your life. We hope to have you join us next time.